Later, during the trial, when James Ray's lawyers would try to sow doubt in the jurors' minds by offering alternative explanations for the death, like poisoning from insecticides, I would think of that day, seeing Kirby's body, bloated with embalming fluid because of how the withered cells were incapable of accepting any liquid offered, even after they had been so thoroughly cooked to death. But those moments of silent fury, ruminating over the reality of what had happened while listening to the lawyers attempt to spin a fantasy in which Ray was completely innocent, were months away. First, there was the wake and funeral. One of the strangest sensations that stands out from these events was the feeling that my immediate family was somehow in the role of comforting everyone else. I didn't think at the time of how peculiar and backwards that is. Aren't these events held in part so that those closest to the person can be comforted by others? Shouldn't we have been receiving the hugs and reassurances? And of course, that did happen. But the feeling that I had to console everyone else was much stronger than the impulse to seek comfort from them. Kirby was the sort of person who acts as a pillar in the lives of people close to her. Her loss was devastating to so many who had relied on her to walk them through their own problems, as well as share in their joy. Kirby was that special combination of loyal and useful. She was the person who got shit done. This is what she was to people. So I think that the idea that she could be vulnerable to the sort of death that claimed her was deeply unsettling for everyone. When she died, my immediate family instinctively knew that her death was shocking, not just because of her age or how she died, but because of how largely she loomed in the lives of people close to her. The wake was held a week after she died. There were still so many unknowns at that point. I tried in my hugs and smiles to offer reassurances to others. I was certain even at that point that Kirby's death was not her own fault, and I wanted people to understand that. So I steeled myself. It was like an acting role. I put on a mask of strength, checked my posture, and held myself up so that I could help hold everyone else up. We all did. As we stood in that ever-awkward receiving line in the funeral parlor, the casket that held Kirby's body was now the focal point in the main room, to the right of where I stood. She had been made up in that way that dead bodies are, so that people could remark on how good she looked. We settled on an outfit that didn't feel quite right because so many of her clothes didn't fit properly. Kirby had loved jewelry and had a huge collection, so we put a statement necklace on her, but nothing looked right. I resisted the urge to make adjustments to her hair and clothing during the hours of the wake itself. From where I stood in the receiving line, the spot in between the two rooms where Kirby's body had rested on the table earlier that week was at my back, and it seemed to hold a presence there, hanging like the electric outline of an image left on your eyelids after you close them. I felt like I was guarding that spot of lingering energy while I shook hands, gave hugs, and air kisses. Because although I wanted to reassure people that Kirby was still who they knew her to be, there were things I couldn't say or didn't really want to say. For example, we decided to put a wig on her body, thinking that the sight of her shaved head would be too disturbing. That stubble prickled like a secret in the casket. For those who could tell the hair was fake, it was a whispered message. We're not quite ready to talk about that just yet. Thanks.
On a plane trip in the summer following Kirby's death, looking through the clouds below, I realized that the solidity of my life had become hazy, often unreachable, and sometimes unrecognizable. My life would never be what it was. I was ungrounded, floating, displaced. I kept wondering if death has a gestation period similar to the birthing of a child. It takes 9 months for the baby to become real. Maybe it takes at least 9 months for death to become as real as life. I know I was not in complete shock or denial, but like pregnancy, in the early months, you know you are expecting. You feel the baby moving. You see your body changing. You imagine and anticipate this new life. And then, after 9 months of development, the baby emerges. And what you knew was happening is suddenly completely real. There's a new life with needs and demands that will change you forever. A new life that will change the priorities of your time and will impact and shape you in unimaginable ways. You have a new identity. Can anyone prepare for motherhood or for sudden traumatic death? On October 8th, 2010, the first anniversary, I was suddenly aware that I was holding my breath for a full year. I realized I had been thinking, I can do this for a year. I can pretend she's in Mexico and will be coming home soon. For a year, I can do this. But after a year, a new level of knowing shows up. This is my life. She will not show up as she did in the past. She will not be here physically, surprising me or orchestrating some amazing adventure. I thought now, maybe now, after almost a year, I truly feel the reality of her death. And now I am changed. With these new demands, what do I have to learn? And will I still be me? I want to share with you that at the end of my section on grief, I have some wise words from my mother, my other mother. My mom once wisely said, "You better be who you want to become by the time you're 50, because after that you will only intensify. Change gets harder the older you are." I heard that insight as a warning to make sure my default personality was well formed by middle age. My personal default are my beliefs, which are largely unquestioned, having served me well over time, and my basic attitude about life that has come to make sense to me. Defaults operate without conscious decisions. If you want to change the default on an electronic device, you have to actually choose another option. I like to think that as I get older, my immediate personality default has been to understand before making a judgment, to choose love over hate, beauty over ugliness, people over things, joy over sorrow, purpose over pleasure, optimism over pessimism, faith over egocentrism. It is for this reason that I sought out counseling and spiritual guidance a few times while grieving. I found myself struggling to be the me I want to be. Talking to another person with proper training can be a way to dispel troubling emotions, untangle confusion, and choose responses, not reactions. It is a way to reboot my default to the settings I want it to be. This pain may teach me, but ultimately it will not alter my essential self. I am still me.